Haiti borders with the Dominican.
Her name is Serena Buffalino. They call her Mrs. B, and her class always begins with a pledge.
Something local, something global. Haiti.
They're words that carry weight here. Helping yourself means helping others, giving back, here and a world away in Haiti.
And nobody's helping them, except for people like us.
It was through her the class learned of Haiti, of the nearly 1 million orphans, many with no school, no support, no Mrs. B in their lives.
They could not wrap their head around that.
Mrs. B's students are among Toronto's most at risk. Their challenges vary from emotional and behavioral difficulties to learning disabilities. Their trauma is so severe they can't function in a regular school setting, and we aren't allowed to show most of their classmates.
For most of the kids, most of society has turned them away. And in this classroom, they're accepted. They're accepted no matter what for who they are.
Take Yolanda. She came here last year so burdened and withdrawn, she would often fall silent, sometimes for days on end. It was, she says, Mrs. B's patience, her quiet encouragement, that saved her.
She actually saves people's lives from dangers.
And perhaps that's why these marginalized kids feel such a kinship with the orphans of Haiti, and why they were moved to act.
And so when Yolanda and Jackie and Patrick said, well, Miss B, we need to build them a school.
Build a school, no easy task. They started out raising money. They sold samosas, washed cars, screened movies, you name it. And in just a few months, this little class raised $20,000. So much, it's not just a one-room schoolhouse they can build, but a full 3-story school. And so Mrs. B set off on a journey she'd dreamed of, up into the dusty mountains above Port-au-Prince to a town called Canaan. It's home to thousands of earthquake refugees who live with no running water, no electricity, and no school, until now. The first step was a temporary school. It's up and running. 53 students already in uniform. The permanent school for 250 is growing from its foundations.
It makes me want to cry because she just makes me feel so awed, and I'm very proud of her.
All of this because of a handful of students back in Canada, and Mrs. B, the teacher who believed in them.
These are for you.
At another fundraiser, a special tribute to the students, accepted by someone who, without Mrs. B, might not be here.
They believe in me and I believe in them, and together we not only change our lives, but we change the world around us.
For inspiring great things and seeing the potential in everyone, Serena Buffalino is this week's Everyday Hero.
This is the reason why I do what I do, is because of Yolanda and all the...
good morning, bonjour, ni hao, hola, bienvenue, wan ying, bienvenidos, and welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunther Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemological storyteller. And each and every week, I have the honor and privilege of taking you on a journey to places you've never been before, to stories you've never heard before. Each week, I get to take you on a mental, a physical, and spiritual adventure into the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry. I do this because gemstones are who we are. Gemstones are basically a microcosm of who we are as human beings. All we basically are in our most minute aspect is molecules. Molecules that came together, that created molecular structures. Your eyes, your hair, your skin, how tall you are, the shape of your lips, all those things had to come together. There are 7.8 billion people on the planet, and yet there are only one you. And I believe in the reason why we are who we are is because of the stories. Each and every week, whether it be today, last week, last month, 2 months from now, what this show is about is to get you to understand that gemstones, precious metals, fine jewelry is all based on a story. And because of those stories, you get the value. Nothing has value without a story. That's what we believe in. That's why I can get on this television show each and every week and talk about gemstones through people throughout the world, and everyone understands it because we all understand or have heard the stories. Throughout the whole history of mankind, gemstones has been a part of that. So I believe that those stories of gemstones, that stories of what gemstones are, how they came about, what they mean to us, those stories, if you put them together and take a step back, those stories can be used as a link, as a template, as an inception point, and as a bridge to help us discover the value of our own stories, of who we are as people, the time that we spend on this planet. What does that mean? How will we be remembered? The people who are still here after we're long gone. And even more importantly, who we are and what we represent to the people around us while we're still here. This is July. Welcome to July. Welcome to the gemstone for July is rubies. And I got again, thank you so much for all your emails, your comments. We are in Barcelona, Spain. I know this because I got a wonderful email from a woman named, let me make sure I have her name, Palola. Okay, Palola. Palola is from Barcelona, Spain. And she asked the question, why are rubies used? Why are diamonds used instead of rubies in engagement rings? What makes rubies so important in one way and then not commonly used as engagement rings in other ways? And that's an excellent question. Again, hola, Palola. ¿Cómo está? That's my limited Spanish, but thank you for watching, and thank you for everybody who watches all around the world. So that's a great question. But before we go into that question, we got to take a step back. We got to take a step back to last week's stone, because I want to get to understand the progression, the importance. So a few months ago, we talked about Alexandrite. Alexandrite is a gemstone that it's a crystal burrow. And what Alexandrite does, it changes color. It changes color from green in the daytime. Natural light makes this reacts with the molecular structure of Alexandrite to make it a green color. And then in the evening, during incandescent light, candlelight, it becomes a red color. And I want you to really understand how incredible that is. As I told you last week, Alexandrite is one of the most valuable gemstones in the world. Extremely rare. So you have a gemstone that is the best of both worlds. The best of both worlds. So when we go back to the green, so let's talk about the molecular structure of Alexandrite. Alexandrite, as I told you, is a beryllium aluminum silicate. That's the thing on 3 words: aluminum, beryllium, silicate. That is what an emerald is. An emerald is beryllium aluminum silicate. That's on one side. And on the other side, a ruby is aluminum oxide. That's what a ruby is, aluminum oxide. So what an alexandrite does is its molecular structure is beryllium aluminum oxide. And the thing that makes an emerald green, the thing that makes an alexandrite green, is a hint of chromium. Chromium is an element. It's called a coloring element. So when you put in the molecular structure of an emerald, again, beryllium, aluminum, silicate, when you put that hint, it's like an ingredient, that hint of chromium, it gives it that green color. When you look at a ruby is aluminum oxide with just, again, a hint. Think of it, as you guys know, I love France and I love French cuisine. And what makes French cuisine, or those of you who cook know that the real difference between your grandmother's cookies and store-bought cookies is the slight ingredients, that hint of butter, that hint of sugar, that hint of nutmeg that gives it that oomph. Well, for rubies, that oomph is chromium. So what alexandrite has is the best of both worlds. And the way that resonates with me is when I think of that, when I began to really understand what alexandrite is, it made me think of people in my life, women that have been in my life. And all of you know women who are the best of both worlds. I'm talking about that woman, that sister that can work a job, take care of the kids, deal with the house, deal with the bills, go to work every day. And then yet, when you take her out, when you go to a function, when you stand across the room and look at the person that, and again, as always, when I say women, just imagine it as a blank line. You fill in the blank, whatever you're into. Women, men, or somewhere in between. All right. But what I do know is that when you look at that person, and you realize that that person is a combination of everything that you've ever dreamt of. Alexandrite is like that stone. I was thinking last week about that movie, The Great Gatsby, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio played in. And remember that scene in The Great Gatsby where the main character, and his name's Gatsby, when Gatsby was talking about how he became who he was, the big house, the parties and everything, he talked about Daisy. And you have to see this movie. This movie is bittersweet. It's a beautifully done movie. And there's just one scene in the movie where he is trying to remember how to get back to Daisy, how to attract Daisy. And he tells that story of when he met Daisy at a party. Now Gatsby knew that he was great. He knew that he could accomplish anything that he wanted to. He was one of those people that God just put in their head already. They knew who they were. But he wanted Daisy. Daisy so intoxicated his soul. That's who he wanted. So he knew that he had to make a choice between who he was and who he could be and who he imagined he could be with Daisy. So when he described to the person who eventually wrote his biography, he described the moment when he was ready to kiss Daisy. He looked up to the heavens. He looked up to God because he knew that if he kissed her, his mind would no longer be able to romp like the mind of God. And he made that decision. That's what gemstones are. That's what alexandrite is. It is that stone that just makes you change everything. Alexandrite was one of the few gemstones that came from royalty. Alexandrite was named after the Tsar, the future Tsar of Russia, Alexander the Great, Alexander the Second. And the reason why it resonated with the Russian people, the Russian monarchy, was because their colors, their royal imperial colors was green and red. It was almost, for them, it was like the universe just created this stone to represent who they are. Alexandrite was supposed to be a stone of good fortune, although it didn't work so well for Alexander II because he got assassinated. But for many, many years, up until the end of the 19th century, of all the gemstones that have had spiritual qualities recognized, one of the last ones was alexandrite. So we talked about emeralds, and I told you about what emeralds meant to people all over the world, how Cleopatra's energy, her power came from emeralds. So you have emeralds on one side, and then you have rubies. And in this month, we're going to talk about the unbelievable power of rubies. But what it's based on is a story. Everything you believe in emeralds, rubies, alexandrite is based on a story. And I'm going to show you how. Imagine the person that you love tells you, honey, I love you. You mean the absolute world to me. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you. That my world, my life will be so much better. Every day that I spend with you will be another day in paradise. He tells you this. And you're like, oh my God, that's just wonderful. This is the man you dreamt of. And so he knows that your birth date or your special day. In fact, I got married in July. So when he gets that ring for the woman that he loves. He comes home, he has a box, a little beautiful box. Let's say it's a Tiffany box. And he has that little blue box in his hand. He gets down on one knee and he says, will you spend the rest of your life with me? And he opens up the box. And when he opens up the box, he shows you this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the molecular structure of a ruby. This is aluminum oxide. Notice you have the aluminum molecules and then you have the oxygen molecules. And every once in a while you see red. The red is the chromium. Just a hint of chromium. And you open up the box and you see a ring. He gave you a very nice setting. You put it in a nice platinum setting and everything else. And he gave you this molecular structure. What would you say? Would you say, oh, honey, baby, this is the most beautiful thing in the world? Or would you say, what is this? And he says to you, because he's a nerd, he says, baby, that's a ruby. It's not a ruby. It's not a ruby. That's just, I don't know, balls tied together. Baby, that's a ruby. And the red is just a hint of chromium. Well, it doesn't look like a ruby because what you were expecting didn't look like that. What you were expecting was this. This is a ruby ring with a platinum and diamond setting. That's what you were expecting. And the only reason why you're so disappointed with this is because there's no story to this. No one told you what the value of this is. So Paloma, this is not the reason why rubies are not used, although they use a little bit more now, is because the stories of that surround what a ruby is. And a ruby in its essence, because again, let's go back and we'll talk about it probably, September, definitely, because a ruby is the sister of sapphire. Both rubies and sapphires have this molecular structure, aluminum oxide. And the only difference between a ruby and a sapphire is with a ruby, you have chromium. Again, that hint of chromium. I say it like that because I imagine when God was when she was cooking in the kitchen and she made rubies, she just said, you know what this needs? It needs something. I know. And she just put a hint chromium, said, voila, ruby. But she liked that and she changed the colors and she wanted other color. So with sapphire, and sapphire comes in every color, emphasis on color of the rainbow. So you have blue, green, yellow, and all that is with sapphire is a hint of iron and titanium. So basically, when we're talking about ruby, what we're talking about is a color. It's a color. The color of red. Red is a powerful color. Red is the story that we have taken on. Every person, every woman understands the power of red. So let's back up. Let's get down to the basics. Red is part of, this is the color wheel. We know from our primary school that red is one of the primary colors. You got red, you got blue, you got yellow. Those are the primary colors that all the other colors come from. And in gemology, in gemstones, that system works the same way. It's just that all these colors are not made from just red and blue. They're made from different molecular, and we'll go over, there's like 8 or 9 what's called transitional elements. These are elements that when you put those elements, that hint of that element into a molecular structure, then that gemstone, that structure becomes that color. So when you look at red, you're looking at a primary color. Now with ruby, so let's go back before we go that. Red has a certain wavelength. When you see red, again, we have 3 cones in our eyes. So red is a long wave, has a very long wavelength. So the wavelength of red, when we see red, we're looking at something in the order of 694, basically 625 to 700 nanometers. Very, very small, microscopic nanometers. That's what we see. We see that wavelength, which is what red is. And because of the color red, it gives us a reaction. Red is the first color that children see, that a lot of animals see. So we'll just talk about mammals. When children see the first color that they can see, because black and white are not colors. You guys remember that from elementary school. Black and white is not color. All the white that you see, white light has, it's a conglomeration of all the colors, all the wavelengths put together. White reflects, black absorbs. So the first color you see is red. As a child, that's what you see. That's what you react to. You react to a wavelength, which you're not even aware of. It's just the way it is. Red has, and you think about what red has the strongest reaction of, and because of that, red has the strongest reaction of all colors. Think about what red means to you. Ladies, when you wear red, you understand what it means. When you're standing there with your red lipstick on, when your red heels, you understand. When you got your Lubus on, you pay that kind of money because that red empowers you. Not to mention the shoes cost $1,500, and women that I've talked to don't think anything of it. It's like, yeah, okay, $1,500. That's how much they cost. And the guy who designed it, he basically looked at the color of women's nails, that wet lacquer color of women's nails, and he thought, how incredible would it be to have that color at the bottom of women's shoes? So he created a shoe that has the most powerful color at the bottom. So every time you watch a woman wear those shoes, you understand the power that emanates. Red is the color of royalty. Red was the first color that they found in the caves of Neanderthals. You know, those cave paintings, that was red. When you look at a beautiful woman wearing red, when you look at a woman wearing a ruby, you're looking at a woman that when she put that on, especially with the diamonds, it empowers her. Rubies, think about all the things that red means. Red is the color of love. That's what July is, the color of love. It's the color of power. Red, because red is the color of our blood, oxygenated blood. Red empowers us. I mean, these are not just something I'm saying. These are studies that have been done. What happens when people see red? So therefore, from the moment you see red, what are you creating? You're creating a story. You're creating a story. When a woman wears these shoes, every woman knows from the moment she puts it on, if she's getting ready for a function, a business party, a interview, if she has these shoes on, she feels like Superman or Superwoman. Anything is possible. When a woman wears red nail polish, when a woman wears red lipstick, when a woman has red lipstick on, what does that mean? Red is the color of fertility. She understands that men are attracted to the color red. And she may not be using that power to actually get a man. She wants to be noticed. She wants to be seen. That's what red does. So when you see red, you're creating a story in your mind. You're creating a story of who that person is because she has on red. And so again, passion, sensuality, wealth. When you're carrying those, I don't know the price of this bag, but so those of you I have quite a few friends, women who understand bags. So this bag is a high-end purse. And it's red, so this bag represents power. When you wear this bag, what is this bag saying to you? Because it's red. So if you're going to talk about rubies, if you're going to talk about the beauty of what rubies are, this is a ruby necklace that was worn by, and I don't have my notes. It was worn by a queen. Who else could, there you go. Who else could wear this? You're not going to be standing in Jewel's or your local supermarket and someone's just standing here and you're not thinking to yourself, this woman got to be rich. Look at her. Well, she was in Chicago. She's got to be crazy for wearing that. But your first thought is, who is this person who wears something like this? So when you begin to understand the connections between gemstones and people, you have to take it all the way down to the molecular level. That's where the story starts, from the molecular level. So here is a color that is part of the universe. It has a specific wavelength that activates in our eyes from childbirth. The story is already being created from childbirth. From inception, you understand. You may not even know why, but you understand you have an affinity to red. That story continues on. You see red shoes, red clothes, red bags, red hair. Only 3% of the population of people who are redheaded, they have red hair. And in ancient, still now, that there is a relationship between red and courage. What was that Disney movie that they used for the woman representing women from Scotland area? Things like that. She was a little girl with red hair. When you see a beautiful woman wearing red, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, oh my God, as a man, oh my God, she's beautiful. It does things to you. It makes you want to do things. And while we're talking about making you want to do things, what I'm going to do is give you a second and let our sponsors tell you a story to make you do something else. And I'll see you on the other side. All right, we're back. We are back. We are talking about the color of red. This is a tube of Dior lipstick. And when they buy this tube of Dior lipstick, they're not just wearing this lipstick just because it looks nice. They're not wearing this lipstick just because it's on sale. They're wearing this lipstick because red is a power color. It is a color that speaks to people's souls. When you wear that, when you look at, I was thinking about a picture I saw the other day of Rihanna. I don't care what she was thinking about. She may be just exhausted, but because of the color that she's wearing, she looks incredible. She looks magical. That's what red is. That is what that color. So when you begin to understand stories, when you begin to understand how to put together your story, the story of your life, you just go back to the basics. How does your story interact with the light? How does the molecular structure of who you are interact with the light? This is what a ruby looks like in rough form. This is what it looks like. It doesn't look like this coming out of the ground. It has to be cut. It has to be polished. It has to be cut in such a way where it accents the color. It just doesn't come up like this. Actually, this is a really nice one, but you see the lightness of color here. We don't want to emphasize that. We want to emphasize the more richer colors. We want to turn it in such a way that when people see it, it interacts with the light, their vision. They see the color in such a way, and that color causes a reaction. As I've told you many, many times, and I will tell you again, there's only 3 things that a good story does. A good story is memorable. A good story calls you to action. And most importantly, a good story makes you need to tell a friend. So when you are creating your story, and there's lots of people that I talk to in my practice, helping people create their stories, the number one thing that I find that people have a problem with is they don't know how to tell their story. They don't see themselves as the world sees them. They don't see themselves, the story of who they are. So therefore, they have difficulties to see how that story radiates, manifests with other people. You are a ruby. I don't know who you are, Palola. I've never met you in Barcelona. But think about the story. You are a woman who lives in Barcelona, Spain. In fact, Spain, bullfighting, right? We talk about bullfighting here. Believe it or not, bulls can't see red. They have diachronic vision, which means they only see certain colors for red. For them, red looks gray. So all the stories that we've been told about bulls attacking the matador because it's red is not true. What bulls attack is the movement of red. They are agitated by the movement of red. That's what they attack. Again, a story. Some of you are sitting there like, oh, I didn't know that. So now you have been told a new story in such a way where you're going to remember it. That's what we have to do as people. What is our stories? One of the things that amazes me about gemology, the thing that I'm so passionate about with gemology is I don't understand how we have some of the issues that we have surrounding color. The whole thing of gemology is about color. I can show you books and books and books and books. And the number one thing that you have to understand as a gemologist is, what is the color? This month, we will go over red gemstones. We will go over spinels. We will go over tourmalines. We will go over all different types of gemstones that are red, but they are not this kind of red. In fact, in India, red, a truly red diamond. In fact, that's not even a good example of it. I'll use this one. A truly beautiful diamond, a beautiful ruby is considered pigeon blood red. Pigeon blood red. Now, no woman wears this piece and tells her friend, the reason why I got it because it reminded me of pigeon's blood. No, that's not what you say. This piece of jewelry spoke to you. It spoke to you because somewhere in your mind, somewhere in your spirit, somewhere in your energy, red reminds you of something. It's the story. It's the first story you saw. Now, so in answer to your question, rubies are being used for engagement rings, but not as much as a diamond, because red also means what? Anger, hatred. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of Darth Vader. Darth Vader's sword, his lightsaber, was what color? Was red. So soon as you saw that color, you already know, okay, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. When you see a red car, if you are walking down the street or driving down the road and you see this car, you automatically associate that car with speed. Speed and expensive. Why? It's because it's red. Some of us have heard rumors, and I haven't found research that said that's true. At least that's not what the insurance companies say. But there's people, me included, that believe that if you have a red car, your insurance rates go up because there is an association with red in speed, in power. When you wear red heels, and I had to turn it this way to see it, that when you see red heels and just you don't even see the rest of this woman. This woman might have 3 eyes, but when you see if she's wearing those heels, you understand that she's on a wholly entirely different level because she's wearing that. You imagine, just think about that picture. Here's just a cigarette. She's standing there with her seam stockings on in these red pumps. And you create the rest of the story. That's what red does. All coming from this same molecular structure of aluminum oxide. That's what red is. That's what a ruby is. So when you talk about a ruby, you're talking about red. Red demands attention. Red demands, it means it's sensuous. When you go to places like in Belgium or in Amsterdam, the places where the prostitutes hang out are called what? Red light districts. When you play football, European soccer, or European football, soccer, that we call here, when someone does something wrong, what do they get? They get a red card. When you went to school, you used your teacher. When you got something wrong, what did your teacher do? Use the red pen. When you saw the red pen, when you saw red ink on your test, like I did in math so many times, I already knew, okay, I'm done. You didn't even see the score. All you knew was you saw red, 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 red. So therefore, yeah, chances are I didn't pass the test. What is the story? That's the emphasis. That's what I want you to get out of every show. How does that gemstone relate to who you are as a person? As I say, you can't just look at a gemstone and know what it is. You can't. What is this? What is this? I can tell you 5 different gemstones that have that similar color. So what is it? I don't know what it is until I understand what? Until I understand where did it come from? How is it made? In the color wheel, how does that color relate to the other colors that I identify as a ruby? So here it goes back to you. Who are you? Where do you come from? How was you made? What is that hint of ingredients that made you who you are, whether it be your family background, whether it be the your brothers and sisters, the people you grew up with, whether it be the teachers that you interact with? All of us are who we are because of the hints of ingredients that was put inside of our basic molecular structure. So how is it that we put so much emphasis behind something that has a basic structure of just 3 elements: aluminum, oxygen, and a hint of chromium? 3. And we as human beings have 6 elements. 6 elements that make us who we are. Oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, I'm missing something, hydrogen, and I'm missing one other element, and I can't remember thinking off the top of my head. I think I said phosphorus. But anyhow, 6 elements. So if you are understanding science, and science is not just one way for one person or one thing and something else. So if we are giving that much value behind something that has 3 elements, if we are valuing that thing because of the color, how do we not value people who have that color? How do we not value that person, those people that have that color? Because it's the same thing. It might come about in a different way, but basically someone who is this color, who has a reddish hue to their skin, the molecular structure of their skin interacts with the light to create the color that they are. And they can't get away from it no more than a ruby can get away from being red, no more than an alexandrite can get away from being alexandrite, because of the difference between daylight and incandescent light, candlelight, not even fluorescent light, candlelight, or the old style bulbs. So when you go to school, when you work, when you get up, the foods that you eat, the things that you're reading, those are the elements that we are including into our molecular structure of who we are. The way we resonate with the rest of the world. As I told you in the beginning, basically, there are 7 elements to every story. Remember that lesson? Remember that episode? I think it was like episode number 2. Sound, passion, the hero, the antagonist, the thing that we have to overcome, awareness, transformation, and then sound again. Gemstones have some of those same elements. Now, if it's not built in them, those are the elements that what it means. For hundreds of years, the rubies, the Black Knight's ruby that sits in the Queen of England's crown, one of her major state crowns, is a beautiful ruby. And for hundreds of years, people believed that that was a ruby. It wasn't a ruby, it's a spinel. It's actually a big spinel. So therefore, because we didn't know what it was, we created a story based on the color and we decided what it is. How is that any different than what we do to each other? And if we are creating stories, if you understand that nothing has value without a story, then you have to understand that the stories that we decide to create in our minds or we decide to create for other people may or may not be the real story of what it really is. That's what that example, which we learn in gemology school, is the importance of what? Gem identification. Who is it? When you see a beautiful woman wearing, you're sitting in a party, you're at a club, and you look across the room and you see this woman sitting at the table next to you, and you just see her legs and her feet and these beautiful red heels. You don't know the rest. You don't know who she is. You make a decision in your mind. Okay, yeah, okay, that's oh my God. At least men do. Men do, but women do too. We make up a story in our minds of what that person is based on what we see, based on the story, the visual indications, the visual hits that we get in our minds, and those eyes, our vision send that message to our brain, and we go, that's my next wife right there. Then we find out that she wasn't a ruby. Rubies have a hardness of 9, which is 10 for diamond. Rubies right there. And actually, it's not accurate. It's not like 9, 10. It's literally 9. And then 10 is exponentially different than 9 on the scale. But it's the next thing. Ruby is a 9. So you get with this young woman, this woman, and you think she is a ruby. Therefore, she has a hardness of 9. She has a durability of 9, but she doesn't really, because she's not really a ruby. She's something else. So as you go on through this day, as we begin to rediscover ourselves after this pandemic, the question I want you to always ask yourself is 2 questions. 1, what is that person? Who is that person? Who is that person's story? Define to understand. The more you understand the story, the more you understand who that person is. And then you'll understand that person's value. So as always, my name is Barry Mixon. I am a gemological storyteller, and I want you to, your homework assignment will always be to take time, take a moment in your day, in your life, to begin to understand your story, to begin to understand the value of your own stories. Until then, till next time, au revoir.